What's up, everybody? I'm Jesse Ziegler from Cycle News, and today we're going to be talking about a Surron Ultra B. In the studio today, I have Sean Finley, who you know as the guy that wrote the story, right, Sean?
Yep.
You have a lot of experience on this electric bike, specifically in the venue of the TKO, Tennessee Knockout Enduro, where you were on this thing for about a week.
Yeah, we spent, 5 days at least laying out course for the Red Bull Tennessee Knockout event, which I've helped organize for the last 13 years. We use trials bikes a lot to lay out the course in the past. And over the last couple of years, we've kind of learned that electric bikes actually work really good for this. And last year we used the Surron Light B, which is one of the bikes that Surron's very well known for, and it worked really good. Mm-hmm. This year we used the new Ultra B.
Yeah, Surron, not really a new brand to the motorcycling community, really. They've been around. You've seen these things terrorizing your neighborhood probably with kids on them. The Ultra B is new, and that's the one we're talking about today. So you've seen the Light B running around your neighborhood. We tested it last year, and then they came out with the Storm B, which is the bigger, almost like a dual sport size bike that I raced at TKO last year and we did a test on. And now they've kind of come in between those two, right, with this new Ultra B.
Yeah, to me, the Ultra B is kind of like the Goldilocks bike. You know, that Storm B is like almost like comparable to like a DR 400 full-size dual sport bike. The Light B is more like a little pit bike.
Yeah.
This Ultra B is sort of in the middle. It's about a 2-inch lower seat height than a full-size dirt bike, a competition dirt bike. Mm-hmm. About a 4-inch shorter wheelbase. Makes it work really well, though, on technical stuff for a more experienced rider, but it also makes it a little more manageable for what it really is, which is an entry-level dirt bike.
Right.
But experienced riders can have a heck of a lot of fun on it, just like you can have a lot of fun on a pit bike.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where, to me, it falls in the middle. It's bigger than a pit bike, but really performance-wise, it's actually pretty darn fun, too.
Yeah, that's a good way to categorize it. I mean, the Light B, the little skeleton-looking things, they're really pit bikes, and serious riders, if they're doing serious terrain stuff, they kind of override that bike pretty quickly. But this bike, I can attest because I raced it this year at TKO. It's got the legs to carry it through competitive riding as well.
Yeah, what's really amazing about this thing is it's $6,500.
Yeah,
so it's like a play bike type, price point. A lot less than a full size competition bike. But this thing comes with a lot of features that you'd expect on like a high-end adventure bike. I mean, it's got 3-engine performance maps. It's got adjustable traction control. It's got adjustable braking and coasting battery regeneration modes.
Yep.
It's got adjustable throttle sensitivity, which we put to good use on the TKO slippery terrain there.
Yeah.
It's got reverse, something that I never thought I wanted on a dirt bike. But I'll tell you what, when you get stuck and you can back up rather than lifting it and repositioning it, yes. We actually found the reverse was actually a pretty cool feature that we didn't expect.
Laying out the course isn't like an easy thing at TKO. It's steep, it's slippery. This thing kind of works. It's like ideal for that because you charge it once during the day and you ride it all day basically, right?
Yeah, what was really cool is, like I said, we used to use trials bikes there. And for some of us, more middle-of-the-road riders, if we could ride it, 10 years ago, if we could ride it on a trials bike, it was good and difficult for the pro-level guys. Well,
yeah. Now
it's not true. Those guys ride stuff that's insane. So what's really cool about the electric bike, though, you never have to start it. You can ride up. There's no clutch. There's no being in gear. All things that are really good for beginner level riders, but for also us for laying out course, we could go up and you can staple up an arrow. You can work on the course. You can not worry about. You could lay the thing over if you need to, have the kickstand. But if it's on an awkward place, you can lay the thing over, not worry about gas tipping out of it. Mm-hmm. All those little things that you just don't really think about. They're also kind of good for a beginner level motorcycle rider too.
Yeah. They make it easy.
You don't have to kickstart it. You don't have to use a clutch. Yep. You don't worry about stalling it. Yeah. You don't worry about being in the right gear.
Yeah.
The brakes are up on the handlebars. The rear brake is on the handlebar as well as the front brake in the normal right hand. But that's actually something that works pretty good for a beginner level rider as well as an experienced rider when you're in really tough terrain.
Above all, it's just easy to ride.
Yep.
And the features that you talked about, like traction control and all those things, they make it actually easier and easier to ride the more you turn them on.
One of the other features that's really stand out compared to a regular full-size bike is this thing weighs 187 pounds. Mm-hmm. A race-ready, like 300 two-stroke, 250 plus. Okay, so it comes a little funky. It comes with a 19-inch front and rear.
Right,
Like
square.
like a motocross bike these days, they all come with a 19-inch rear and a 21-inch front. Now these
or
are
18-inch rear for an off-road bike.
and off-road bikes come with 18s, and so it's a little funky, and it comes with some kind of small tires on it. I'd say it's one of the few things that's, I guess holds it back. Once we started to ride it, we're going, oh, they're small, skinny little tires. Contributes a little bit to the weight, but honestly, that's a pretty small piece of that, 60 plus 70 pound difference over a regular full-size bike, but it contributes a little bit. The one thing we did when you decided to go race it, actually the one change we made to it was put standard 21-inch front, 18-inch rear, so mostly for tire selection.
Absolutely. You can get aftermarket. I think these were Warp 9s. They send the full-size wheel set. You can put full-size IRC gummy tires on it. You can run any full-size trials tire on the back and the front if you wanted to at that point.
That wheel swap is only if you're being pretty serious and trying to race this like a Tennessee Knockout Enduro.
If you're being stupid like me and racing in a Tennessee Knockout.
If you're just riding this thing for fun, like it's intended to, most beginner-level riders, they're going to be perfectly fine with those stock 19 front rear. You don't get a gummy tire.
But the weight is significantly less. Plus, there's no rotating mass in this thing. Like, the only thing rotating is the crank coming out of the engine for the front sprocket and then the wheels. So it not only is 60, 70, 80 pounds lighter than your competitive bike, but it also feels completely planted on the ground all the time. Because there's no weird gyroscopic stuff happening.
Exactly. It feels even lighter than the the 187 pounds that it is.
Yep.
And then when it comes to performance, it only has like 16, 17 horsepower. Not up to the level of like a 302 stroke these days, or definitely like a 450 motocross bike.
No, the electric bike is going to be all about the torque, though.
Yeah, but I was going to say, 16, 17 pound horsepower, but it's got 325 foot-pounds of torque, which is about 8 times more than a motocross bike or an off-road bike these days. So that's what you really feel. Yeah. And this thing was, once we got out and started riding it on the course, to lay out course just to ride and ride for fun, actually, it makes riding around the Trials Training Center property actually really fun. Right. So even though we're working on the course, we're actually having a blast riding this thing. We actually had another full-size 2-stroke as an alternative bike, and we were hopping back and forth between a couple of us riding them. Pretty cool to just see how they compare back to back. And with all those settings that are available, you can put the thing. We kind of learned the trick for experienced riders was to put it on full max power, but like one level of traction control kicked in. Yep. And as you've experienced racing, you can literally walk up a steep, slippery hill. Yeah. With the throttle on, the thing will barely spin the tire, and you could just tractor right up these things. It was pretty impressive. Like, honestly, probably get up a hill better than you could on a full-size regular 302 stroke.
I got to situations, and we can roll some clips during the race, that really steep stuff. Doesn't look steep on camera, but like also the dirt was prime when I was racing, but you were testing and riding when it was rainy. Yeah. If it rains in Tennessee at TKO, people, it is unrideable.
We were out there riding on Tuesday
when it was raining.
And with the small stock tire on, and still, like, the only limiting factor was really the tire. The tire would actually gum up with mud, and that would be the only thing that could keep you from climbing. Otherwise, when we swapped out later in the week to the full-size tire that stayed cleaned out, the thing would climb anything.
Yeah, and I got to say, like, the traction control on this bike is a little different than you would experience with a gas-powered motorcycle, where it's either interrupting ignition cycles or it's interrupting like a fuel delivery in the throttle body. It's electronic, so it literally just rheostats down the power delivery to the rear tire, and it's idiot proof. I mean, I got to these steep sections and I was cooked because it was hot, and it was like, I don't want to get off and push. I don't want to slip my rear tire. I clicked the traction control on and just mashed the throttle to the stop, and then just tiptoe. Literally, it won't go unless you push it a little bit. Then it would just go as long as it has traction, and then it'll stop if it starts spinning, and you just tap it a little bit with your toes again. And I just kept cranking probably for 10 minutes up these ravines, just taking my time, drinking water, and not losing any traction. And it was like, I need this right now. Top level guy, they don't need that. They're going to have the traction control at their fingertips with their skill.
Exactly.
But when you're smoked and like you don't have that skill to back up on, it was nice. I was happy to have that bike when I was in trouble.
That was what I noticed when I actually hopped off of that bike on a really slippery hill that I could not make because the tire was gumming up, and I was like hopped onto this 2-stroke, very capable off-road bike with a gummy
Yeah.
tire.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was having to clutch it, keep it in the right gear,
Spin.
and like I had no traction control. The traction control was my left fingers.
Yeah.
Pro level guys can do that.
Sure.
You start getting tired.
Even good non-pro level guys, unlike me.
Yeah. So it was a big wake up call to like, oh my gosh, like I ride these regular bikes all the time.
Yeah.
But this was a challenge to hop back onto it after riding the electric bike.
Again, makes it a no-brainer for entry level or, a spouse or a buddy bike. If you got people that don't ride that often that you want to take out and have fun with, like throw them on that thing. They're going to have a great time. Another thing I think is unique about it, you said earlier, were the hand brakes. Brakes are on the front and rear brakes are on the hands. As soon as you wrap your head around that as a motorcyclist and you start riding it that way, like you ride a mountain bike or something similar, in hard enduro type terrain or off camber or you're stepping up stuff type terrain, it's kind of an advantage because you don't have to get your foot up on the peg to use the rear brake. You can put both your feet on the ground and use the rear brake from sliding backwards. You can, when you're going downhill, you can, like bulldog it down, but use both brakes to bulldog down a hill. And it's kind of another one of those things where I was in trouble. I was tired. I was breathing heavy walking downhill because I was so exhausted. And I was like, I'm really glad there's a brake right there I can use without getting on this bike.
Yeah.
Just another one of those small things that you don't really think about being an advantage until you're in those situations. And then you realize that's what makes it a good entry-level bike.
Yeah, exactly. Those things that make it easier to ride hard stuff for an experienced rider.
Yeah.
And those settings too. For us, we found wide open power, the highest of the 3 power modes.
Yep.
One level of traction control, but I could see a beginner level rider that you don't want the thing to step out at all on them.
Right.
You could dial it up to 2 or 3 on the traction control, dial back the power so the thing doesn't get away from them. That's where I could see it's actually really, really a great entry level bike. Arguably,
definitely.
Arguably much easier to ride than any gas powered entry level bike, which also has a clutch,
For sure.
a shifter, all those things that you have to try to teach somebody.
You can I accidentally turned the power down to like the eco mode a bunch of times because the switch is right there and you can do it if you hit your legs on it. But it goes really mellow in eco mode. Like you could put anybody on that's never ridden and probably have good faith they're not going to loop out into something because it's pretty mellow.
Exactly. You don't have that whiskey throttle concern where it's just going to loop out into the side of your truck that happens to be parked there.
Yep.
But yeah, that was one of the, I guess, for the more experienced level, I know that was a little bit irritating for us as we were laying out course and trying to hit tough sections. And I think for you racing as well, you could actually inadvertently hit that power switch. It's on the left-hand side and you could jam it with your knee.
I did a lot. And I was just like, I don't know how to turn the bike on because it won't run if you hit like one of the power switches.
Yeah,
it's a kill switch.
It was actually, there's a kill switch that it was easy to hit
Yep.
by accident, and then that power level switch. And
so you'd accidentally go down to eco mode, but inadvertently hitting switches, kind of a negative on it. If you're going to be out there competitive or if you're learning, you're going to accidentally hit those two and not know which switch it is probably.
One of the other questions we get a lot on these things is range. And
Obviously, the biggest anxiety with an electric vehicle is range.
Yep. And can tell you, we rode this thing 3+ hours.
Yep.
No problem. Riding around on difficult terrain. Now, we weren't ripping down a road at 50 miles an hour.
That's like you're out building the course
Yeah.
for half the day and you're not charging it up.
Exactly. And we'd come back and the thing would still have, some charge. So, I mean, we'd ride it 3 hours and it had more range still to go.
Do you have any idea how many miles that was, you think, riding?
30, 40 plus miles through the course of the
So
day.
like a normal trail ride with a family, you go 20 miles total, you stop and have lunch. It's a similar situation. It's totally capable of doing that.
So those are the two questions. Range,
Yep.
how long does
Yep.
it last? Definitely 3+ hours. I know when you raced it, you did
Yeah.
the 11-mile amateur loop on
Yep.
the first major day of racing.
Yeah.
It used about 60% of the battery at race
Yes.
pace.
Yep.
Then the next day, you actually qualified to the round 2.
Because I'm an athlete.
Yeah, you made the top 10 out of 50 plus riders.
Big deal.
Yeah,
It's
so
the traction control is cheating.
pretty cool. I mean, you were racing against other guys on those same bikes though. So
That's fine. I'm taking the
wasn't
credit.
bad. In fact, I think 3 of the 6 riders that finished on Sunday were actually Surron Ultra-Bs. So,
See, there you go.
but yeah, that second day when it was a longer, more difficult course, you raced for nearly
Yes.
2 hours.
I did. I know. I was
And
there.
the thing still had like 25% battery.
I think it had 25% when I got done, and it took me about an hour and 45 minutes or something to do that race. And I thought, this thing has a 2-hour race range. I mean, granted, I was taking a long, deep breath on some downhills. I wasn't charging like you would if you were a capable racer for that amount of time. But a 2 hour at my pace range is pretty decent, I think.
Yeah, and on pretty hard stuff.
In really hard stuff, like there was some swearing going on too.
Yeah. The hard stuff, as you mentioned, the ups and the downs and all that stuff. I mean, the brakes, we talked about being on the handlebars, but they actually work really good.
They're capable, and they're like no name brand brakes you haven't heard of as a dirt biker before.
Yeah, but they would squeak a little bit. I know when we're laying out course, we do these long, full mountain downhills, and the things start squeaking, but they never faded.
I knocked a rotor. I bent a rotor, which is not an uncommon thing in a hard enduro to bend a rotor, and I just kind of tweaked it back, or I might have swapped the stock rotor off of the stock wheels and put it on the aftermarket wheel and didn't have that problem again. That was literally the only thing that happened to the brakes.
Yep. And normally, if you're racing hard enduros, you'd put guards and all that stuff on there.
Normally, I'd be prepared.
We didn't do any of those things.
We didn't. It suffered little damage. It has some stock hand guards that are kind of floppy, and I broke one of those off, but nothing that wouldn't happen on any other hand guard.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point on the durability thing. It's proved we beat the crap out of it for, like I said, 5 days at least before you showed up, and
poor bike.
A good 3 to 5 hours a day. I mean, we would ride it 3 hours, come back, throw it on the charger while we're having for lunch, and ride it for another 2 or 3 hours each day. So we had 5+ days of that on abusive, rocky, gnarly terrain. Then you raced it 3 times.
Through rain, through mud. Yep. And then when I raced, it was not cold out. It was hot.
Yep.
So it was getting hot. Electric motors and batteries don't like heat. Still didn't have a hiccup or an error code or anything on there.
Yeah, that was actually another good test of it for sure, because it was definitely hot. In fact, there was a lot of riders and bikes that were struggling, and that thing was doing well.
Yep.
And then on that charging time, the other question kind of related to the range.
Sure.
Like I said, we charge it over lunch because they say it takes 3 hours to charge it from 0 to 100. Well, in reality, you don't really run it to 0.
Right.
We would come back and the thing would be, 50% off. We'd charge it for an hour and the thing would be charged again.
Yeah.
We, when we really ran it hard after, we didn't charge it at lunch or whatever, the thing would be down to maybe 20%. It would charge in a couple hours. So yeah, I think their range of their estimate of 3 hours from 0 to 100.
Pretty conservative.
I say it's pretty real.
You can get it by. You're rarely going to spend 3 hours on the charger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now it's
unless you pushed it home.
Yep. And I know a lot of the other maybe high performance, electric bikes like a Stark Varg or something like that.
Yeah.
And we've seen it even with the Altas and all
that.
Yeah,
back when the Altas were around.
If you're ripping them on a track, you could burn those things down in 30 minutes, and then it would take 3 hours to charge. Now, this is a different level, and this thing's not a motocross bike. You're not racing it on the track. But for regular trail riding, I think most people would at least get 3 hours of fun out of this thing before they had to put the thing on the charger.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. It's not a Stark Varg pumping out 80 horsepower trying to get whole shots. It's not trying to be that bike at all. It does have exciting power in the top mode. It goes, it's fun, it rips. It feels competitive off-road. It's not a motocross bike. I mean, when the Storm Bee came out, the fuller size one, they were kind of teasing that as almost like you could use it at the track bike. And when I rode it, I was like, this thing weighs 280 pounds or 300 pounds or whatever it did.
Yeah.
Not quite there yet, but it's really like the trail riding crowd that needs more durable, dependable stuff, not the ultra high performance bike.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a motocross bike, but it's a fun trail bike for beginners.
For sure.
Or guys that just want to, just like the pit bike mentality. You can go out and have a heck of a lot of fun with these things. And one of the coolest things to me, we had some other electric bikes there, including the Light Bee that we had from last year, and an electric motion, which is an electric trials bike, basically.
Right. Yep.
We had those bikes, and when you're riding with 3 guys on these things, and you're like, you can yell at each other and have fun.
Yeah.
Like what you mentioned when you're racing.
Yeah,
it's
you
actually
can.
One of the fun things about an electric bike. It's like that you don't even think about. Like a normal, you can't hear each other talking when you're on a regular bike.
No, it opens up a new world of like silliness. Honestly, you can, or ease of communication. If you were just riding with your kids and everybody was on electric bikes, you could just be like, stop. You wouldn't have to like do this and stuff, like doing the hand signals and all that stuff. Like you can just say, hey, stop. We're going to stop here. The only thing that stood out to me as a negative was compared to any other like standard bike you would get was the switches were easy to hit and knock and turn off. The other thing was the fork, the suspension on the fork performance. The shock seemed to be pretty darn good, actually. I mean, I'm not underweight, I would say, for that bike. I'm probably on the higher end of the weight class, like 180 pounds, 190 pounds. You're not going to want much heavier people on that thing bouncing it around that much with the stock suspension components. But the fork is harsh. Like it beats you up a little bit. It needs some tuning maybe, but hey, as a trail bike goes,
Yeah,
it's decent.
For a $6,500 motorcycle.
Yeah. Today, that's a pretty good deal for a bike.
And that's where I kind of see it. It's like the Light Bee. It's a little bit like a pit bike mentality still. If you really got this thing and you're one of those guys, a experienced rider that wants to really push it, you'd probably get some upgraded suspension that's available for it. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of options available pretty quickly here. You know, along with that simplicity of ownership, there isn't gas. There's not, you know, like I mentioned on the riding side, there's not the clutch and gears and all that stuff. So it does bring, I think, a lot of new people to motorcycles, which is awesome.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a good deal. I had a lot of fun on it. We have a super hard episode up on the Cycle News channel. You can watch me swear at it.
Yeah, like I said, it's really an entry-level bike.
Yeah.
Fun to race for us guys that are having, you know, turn them into sort of pit bike racing mentality. But
I think so.
But they're great for both, really. And and durability factor, like I said, we beat the crap out of it for a solid week. But that week was like a year of normal usage for anybody. So we're pretty happy with the performance on the thing.
I agree. It's a good pit bike. It's also a good all-around bike. I think it's the bike. If you're looking at Surrons, it's really the one you should get, in my opinion, if you can afford it.
I agree.
It's the best one.
I mean, I agree. It's like it's kind of the Goldilocks of the three Surron bikes. I could see kids liking the Light Bee. It's like ripping around out in the canyons. It's definitely cool. But if you're getting a little more performance and a little more looking for more like a dirt bike, the Ultra Bee is a big step towards a true dirt bike.
All right. If you want an electric dirt bike, check out Surron. If you want to know more about dirt bikes, just keep watching Cycle News. Read Cycle News. Cycle News is free subscription. You just go to cyclenews.com/magazine and you can sign up for free. You get a digital magazine 50 times a year, once a week, almost every week of the year. We take 2 weeks off because we're lazy. Sean, you got anything else to say?
Nope, just had a lot of fun with that bike. Though.
Yeah.
The Ultra Bee, definitely, like I said, it's work actually laying out that course. It's hot, it's humid, it's raining. We've got to get it done in a week, and it turns into a fun week, though.
Yeah, check out TKO coverage. Wasn't it just on MAV TV or something?
Yeah, on MAV TV, and you know, next year it'll be back as a world championship round with all the top, you know, Manny Lettenbichler, Billy Bolt, you know, Cody Webb, all the top Americans facing off against the best guys in the world, and it's kind of a cool event. Yeah. But we got to ride these bikes around and have fun on that same course.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Tune in later. We'll be here.